Welcome back, everybody. My name is Nick. This is Swiftful Thinking. In this series, we are rebuilding the user interfaces of popular apps in SwiftUI. And so far in this playlist, we have covered Spotify, we covered Bumble, and now we are rebuilding Netflix. This is the third video in the Netflix section, so if you missed the first two, check those out first and then come back to this one. Those are available for free on my channel in this playlist, and they lead up to the code that we're going to do in this video. I like this video because we're really going to focus on the micro interactions of working with the scroll view and the scroll view offset and really animating the header on the home screen. So as you guys saw in the last couple of videos, that header has some really cool animations to it. And now we're going to talk through how we can get that logic to do exactly what we want, how we can really make it pixel perfect.
Welcome back, everybody. We are building Netflix. So this is what we got so far. We got a header at the top. We got a little category row here. We got our hero cell and a little bit of a scroll view going on. In the last video, we focused on making this screen and figuring out how to set up our scroll view here. And this is where we're going to be going in this series. We're going to build out a bunch of these rows next. And then we're going to start looking at some of the animations for this header. Let's go ahead and build one of these rows first. And we're going to start by just building this cell. Again, in SwiftUI, it's often easier to start with the smallest component and then build your way up. So build your way backwards. So we're going to start with one of these cells. Then we're going to build out one of these rows. Then we're going to put it on the screen. So this cell is first, and let's get that going. I'm going to jump into Xcode here. Let's go to our components section, right click and create a new file. It'll be a SwiftUI view. I'm going to call this one the Netflix movie cell. We'll click create and get the canvas going. Let's start with some initializers for this cell. Firstly, I want to have a specific size for the image in this cell. So you can see here, these are going to be in grids, and I want to fix the actual size of the cell. I talked about this when we were doing the Spotify UI. Oftentimes when you have these horizontal and vertical grids, it becomes easier in SwiftUI to actually fix the size of the content in these cells. Generally, that's not something that we want to do, but in these grids, it's basically easier to work with, makes it a little bit more performant. So what I'm going to do here is pass in a variable for the width of the cell. That'll be a CJ float, and we'll set it equal to 90. Let's do a height, CG float as well. Set that equal to maybe 140. Let's pass in an image name of type string. We'll set it equal to constants.randomImage. We will add in a title of type string, and let's make it optional and set it equal. Let's just call it movie title for now. All right, if we look at these cells, we can see there's the little recently added flag on some of the cells. So let's make that a Boolean. Var is recently added. Of type bool, I'll set it equal to true for now, just so that we can play around with it while we're building. Let's also, what we're going to do is include the top 10 ranking here, and it's going to be optional. So only some cells will have this top 10. Obviously, our UI goes way past top 10. Maybe we can fix that later. But only some cells are going to have that. So we're going to make it optional. We'll say var top 10 ranking of type optional integer, and we'll set it equal to nil for now. So if there is an integer here, we'll render one of these numbers. If there's not, we'll just render it as a regular cell like all the rest of them. Let's go ahead and start building that. Firstly, let's create a Z-stack, open the brackets. We know in the background, we're going to have an image loader view with the URL string will be our image name. And while we're at it, let's give the Z-stack a frame with a width of our width and a height of the height. That looks much more like the cells that are actually going to be on the screen. In front of this image is clearly the title and the recently added. So let's add a V-stack here. Maybe some spacing of 0, open the brackets. At the top, we're going to have the title. We'll just add the title here. It is optional, so we'll do an if let title. If we get it, we'll put it on the screen. Let's give that title a font of subheadline. Let's give it a font weight of medium and a line limit of 1. So we can see here that we want it to be exactly just one line. Obviously, I'm looking at this and I'm seeing that a lot of these titles are cut off because they're obviously not made for these tiny little cells. I'm sure Netflix has some special logic to showing the title in these cells that we're not going to deal with. But for right now, what we're going to do is actually just make it the first word so that it maybe doesn't get cut off all the time. So let's actually here get the title, and let's also say let first word equals the title dot components separated by spaces, and let's get the first component. Let's put the first word on the screen. So it just says movie. I think that'll look a little bit better in our final UI. I didn't do that in the simulator here, but I think that'll look a little bit better. Below this, we're going to add the recently added text. So here we'll just say text recently added. That's going to have a background of .Netflix red, and it's going to have and let's give the entire Z stack a foreground style of .Netflix white. Cool. We're getting there, guys. You can see it on the right here. But let's do some formatting before we move forward. Firstly, I want this all to be lined up to the bottom. So let's add in here alignment of bottom. Secondly, recently added, I want this to be a line limit of 1. Let's make this a smaller font, maybe caption 2. Let's make it font weight of bold, so it's a little bit thicker. And let's let it scale down a little bit. We'll do a minimum scale factor of 0.1, just in case it needs to scale down a little. What we're going to do is add some padding. So firstly, before the frame, let's go max width of infinity. So it's stretched as wide as it can. And then if I look at this, I want to add padding between the text and the edge of the red. So let's go before the backgrounds here. Let's go padding. Let's go horizontal, maybe 4. And I also want to go vertical of maybe 2. That looks a little bit better. After the padding, I also want a little bit of spacing so it doesn't go to the edge of the frame here. So let's go down here. We'll go padding horizontal of 8. Pushes it off the edge a little bit. All right, we're going to add here a corner radius. So after the background, we'll go corner radius of maybe 2. And if I zoom in really big, you can see the corner radius on all 4 corners, right? Corner radius right there, right there, right there. And when I look at the actual finished UI on Netflix, they only have a corner radius on the top left and top right corner. So we could create a custom modifier only making 2 corners curve. What I'm actually going to do is just move down the recently added so that it's a little bit off of the cell. So just a quick little hack here. Let's go offset. Let's go Y by maybe 2. So it's moved down beyond the actual frame of the object. Now underneath the text, I'm actually going to add a little bit of extra padding here. Let's go bottom. So it's a little bit of a lopsided object. And then we're going to create a corner radius for the entire the Z stack. So let's just here go corner radius of 4, which should clip it to the frame of that. So now I have only corner radius on the top left, top right, and these just go straight through past the frame. And it looks a little bit more on par with what Netflix actually has. I also want to add maybe a little bit of shadow behind this. So here, let's add a background and let's do a linear gradient. Let's go colors from blue to green. Let's go from top to bottom. Cool. Triple click, Control M. The top color, we're going to do the shadow color will be the Netflix black. Let's go opacity 0 at the top. And then I'm going to paste in below. Let's go down to opacity of 0.4. It looks a little too dark, so maybe we'll just do copy a couple of these. I'll make the first one 0.3. A nice little subtle background gradient there. I want to extend it up a little bit further. So again, if I put color.red here, we can see how far vertically it goes. I'm going to add a little bit of padding here on the top of 6. So it extends a little bit extra far. Again, you can see the movement, 6 extra padding. And let's keep that as the opacity. Cool. We're almost done, guys. We only want to show the recently added if it is recently added. So let's add a quick opacity here. Is recently added 1, otherwise 0. Let's test it real quick. Make this false. Hopefully it works. Cool. While we're at it, I'm going to make the preview. Let's put it in a VStack, paste a couple of these. This one's going to say is recently added. I'm going to set to false. This one I'll say is recently added. I'll set to true. So top two, looking good. And the reason I'm doing the opacity and not if is recently added is because I want the title to stay in the same vertical spot on each of these. So if I didn't render this on some of the views, if I said if is recently added, and I put this inside some sort of if statement, you can see here the title is now going to shift down for when it's not there. And that's going to have a bad UI if I have all of these in line with each other. So this is a good case where we're going to use the opacity rather than an if statement. All right, last thing we need to do is the top 10. So firstly, let's put this in a black background. So let's go color.black, ignore safe area. And let's get the top 10 going here. So if there is a top 10 number, so if we injected a top 10 ranking, we then want to draw a big number on the left side. So let's put this in an H stack and draw the number on the left. So here I'm going to take the entire Z stack, cut it. Let's add an H stack, open the brackets, and paste this in. On the left side of the H stack, we're going to say if let top 10 ranking. Let's put text on the screen with the top 10 ranking. Let's give this a super large font of system. So option enter on this completion. Let's give it size 100, weight of medium and serif. So it's a slightly different font. We cannot see it. So let's come down, take our foreground style, put it on the entire H stack. Is it on the H stack? Yes. Why can I not see it? Oh, because we don't have any top 10 rankings. All right. So for the bottom two, let's copy these two and paste them. So we have a duplicate of that. And we're going to say top 10 ranking. Let's set it equal to 10 just for now so that we can see it. Let's put this one as 10 as well. I want to test out two different numbers. So let's copy and paste this. And then we'll make two that say maybe, let's do the number 2 and then number 2. Cool. All right, too many cells on the screen. Put them in a scroll view, and we should be good. All right. These are looking good, but not great. So we can see the 10 and the cell are aligned vertically in the center. That's because the H stack has spacing. So again, if I put a background of color.blue on the entire H stack, we can see that it is vertically aligned. So let's give the H stack alignment of bottom. So it's bottom aligned. This really large text font has some line spacing built into it. So you can see there's a little spacing here. Even though these are vertically aligned, the font here actually has some extra spacing underneath it. You can see, if I comment this out, you can see that it is actually aligned to the bottom. But when you make a really large font, there's a little bit of extra space underneath it. So let's just manually add an offset here. Let's go Y of 16 just to push it down a little bit. And that looks good. Maybe we go 20. Looks a little bit better. Let's check out our 10s, see if that looks good too. Yeah, all right. That's close enough for our purposes. Then lastly, I want to put it behind the object a little bit. So squish them in a little bit. So H stacks have spacing, obviously. So we did 10, we're going to push them out. If we did 20, push it out further. 40, 50, push it out. But let's go back down to 10, to 20, and let's go -10. Negative, and basically just inversing them. A little too much. Let's go -8. That looks good to me. And I think that's it for this cell. Let's get rid of the blue background. Let's jump back to our Netflix home view. In our home view, we have a hero cell, and then we have a for each with a bunch of rectangles that are red underneath it. Let's replace those with our actual content now. So we're going to have a bunch of rows here. So I'm going to create a lazy V stack. Let's add in some spacing between each of these cells of 16. And then we want to loop on the product rows. So we already have these product rows coming into the screen here. I think we already loaded them up. Let's loop on the product rows. We're going to say for each product rows, row in. And let's put a V stack on the screen here. Let's go alignment of leading and spacing of 6, open the brackets. First, we're going to add the text of the row.title. Give that a font of headline, and we'll do the padding in a second. Next to that, let's add in our scroll view. It'll be scroll view. We're going to go horizontal. While we're at it, let's add the scroll indicators as hidden. Now we're going to do a lazy H stack. So if we have a lot of cells going horizontally, they will render lazily as well. And in here, let's go for each. Now we're going to go for each. We're going to look at the row dot products. So each row has products. And then we're finally going to add a Netflix movie cell. The width and height, we're going to keep the default. And then let's triple click, Control M. The image name will be the product. Let's go product dot first image. Let's go product dot title. Let's go product dot. Do we have any sort of recently added? No, we do not. So let's jump into our product and just add some fake data here. We'll say var recently added of type bool. And I can set it equal to a bool dot random. But what we're going to do for this is recently added. We're going to not make it a computed variable. So if I have this in my code base, just so it's clear for those of you who are unsure how these work, every time I call is recently added, this is going to execute. This will trigger a new bool.random. So if I call is recently ended 5 times, I can get different results. Sometimes it might be true, sometimes it might be false. But for my mock here, when I'm dealing with a product, I want the same product to only have one value, always be true or always be false. I want it to be a random amount, but I only want it to calculate once. I don't want it to recalculate the random every time I call it. So what we're going to do here is create a, let's call it recently added as well. It'll be of type bool, except this one we're going to make a let, meaning it's going to be a constant, so it will never change. We'll set it equal to a closure, and we'll execute the closure just like we would execute a function with the open and close parentheses. And inside this closure, we will return a bool.random. So now if I delete this and I call this recently added, this is a let, it's a constant. This is going to execute the first time I call it and only once forever. So if it calculates as true, it will remain as true for the life cycle of that session. I actually don't want it to be just every other true or false. So let's make it maybe about 25% of the time is recently added is true. So what we're going to do here is actually do an integer.random. We're going to go 0 to up to 4. So actually 1 to 4. So it's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Pick a, and then we're going to say if that random number is equal to 1, then recently added is true. So of the 4 numbers that are in here, if it is equal to 1, that's about 25% of the time. So is recently added should be true 25% of the time in our app. Let's go product.recently added. And the top 10 ranking, let's just put as nil for now. Get this on the screen. Cool, these are looking good. I like how the scroll view is going all the way through the edge of the device. Let's add a little bit of padding now. So on the title, let's add padding of dot leading. We can go dot horizontal here of 16. And we'll do the same thing, except we're going to go inside the scroll view on the H stack. We'll add padding as well. So my stack still goes through the edge of the screen. Let's fill out the top 10 ranking now so that we can get the numbers going here. Just to make sure it works, let's put the number 1 real quick, make sure it renders. These look pretty cool. So firstly, we want the index. So the ranking is going to be the same order that these are in the screen, right? Or it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. So what we can do here, let's get the index of the items that we're looping on. So we're going to loop on the products.enumerated. That's going to give us back the index and the product, but this enumerated is actually not an array. I think it's a subsequence. So we should actually wrap it as an array. And then we just need to include the ID \.cell, or sorry, we'll use the offset as the ID. So the index will be the ID itself. And then the return values will be the index as well as the product. Cool. Let's put the index on the screen here. So we got index. Starts at 0. Let's go index plus 1. 1, 2, 3. Looking better. I just don't want every single row to be a top 10 row. So let's just make it maybe the second row. Maybe let's just say the second row is top 10. So we're going to do the same thing that we did here. with the array, except we're going to do it up here. So let's just go array, product rows.enumerated. Let's go ID \offset. This will be the row index and the row. And let's just add a little bit of logic that says if the row index is equal to 1, then let's add our index plus 1. Otherwise, no. Second row is now the top 10 row, and it's looking pretty good. Let's go down to the bottom, make sure that it works. We don't need these red rectangles anymore. Let's delete those. Let's scroll all the way down to the bottom. Looks like it is working. It's looking pretty damn good, if I do say so myself. All right, before we wrap up this video, let's clean up the code a little bit. I don't like how this is getting hard to read. It's a lot of code here. I'm going to cut the hero cell. Let's come down to the bottom. Just going to create a private var. Let's call this hero cell of type SumView. Paste in the hero cell. Put that back up here. I actually think we need to pass in the product of type product. Should be a function that returns SumView. And the hero cell will be passing in the hero product. Cool. Let's also cut our lazy V stack here. Come down at the bottom. And I'm just going to say private var. Let's call this category rows of type SumView. Paste those in and come back up here. And this should be our category rows. Just to make it a little bit easier to read, this should be the product now, the product. Let's let that render real quick. That's it for this video. We are going to now finish up this view in the next video, and we're going to deal with animating a header in the next view. And then we're actually got another whole screen that we're going to build in a couple upcoming videos as well. Thank you all for watching. As always, my name is Nick. This is Swiftful Thinking, and I'll see you in the next video.